I really would like my old life back where I could walk the streets like a normal person, but got people coming up asking for money.
Abraham Lee Shakespeare was a casual laborer from the U.S. who won a $30 million lottery jackpot in Florida. In 2009, his family declared him missing, and in January 2010, his body was found buried under a concrete slab in the backyard of an acquaintance. This true crime event proves the old saying, more money, more problems to be true. Sit back, relax, and let me share with you a story of a big win that ended up with a big loss. Welcome back to True Crime Capital once again. Abraham Lee Shakespeare was born on April 23, 1966, in Sebring, Florida, to his parents, Elizabeth Walker and the late Robert Lee Brown. He had 4 siblings, 2 brothers, and 2 sisters. Abraham was married and had several children, although the exact number is unclear. He had been divorced at least twice, and his ex-wives have not been publicly identified. Abraham had a troubled upbringing and had a history of legal issues, including several arrests for drug-related offenses and assault. Despite his criminal record, he was described as a caring and generous person by those who knew him. The Florida Lotto winning ticket worth $30 million was sold at a Town Star convenience store in Frostproof, Florida, on November 15, 2006. On that day, Abraham Lee Shakespeare and co-worker Michael Ford were headed toward Miami when they stopped briefly at the convenience store in Frostproof to buy drinks and cigarettes. Ford got out of the truck and asked Shakespeare if he wanted a soda. Shakespeare instead asked Ford to buy him 2 lottery tickets. Shakespeare said that he paid Ford $2 for the tickets out of the $5 he had on him that day. Abraham later checked the winning number on a local newspaper, only to discover that he hit the jackpot and was the winner of a whopping $30 million. Abraham was overwhelmed with joy as he shared the news with his friend Michael Ford. After Abraham successfully claimed his lottery winnings, Ford later approached Shakespeare demanding a share of the jackpot of no less than $1 million, which Shakespeare refused to pay. In April 2007, Michael Ford sued Shakespeare for allegedly stealing the winning ticket from him. October 19, 2007. A jury took only a little over an hour to rule that Shakespeare did not steal the winning ticket from Michael Ford's wallet. The jury did not believe Ford's stolen lottery ticket story, and Shakespeare prevailed in the courts. Shakespeare had chosen a one-time lump sum cash payment of $17 million. In January 2007, Shakespeare bought a $1.1 million home in a gated community in North Lakeland. After winning the lottery, Abraham became a prominent figure in his community and was known for his philanthropic activities. He donated money to various charitable causes and helped people in need, earning him the nickname the Good Samaritan in some circles. Abraham Shakespeare met Doris D.D. Moore through mutual acquaintances sometime after he won the lottery. D.D. Moore presented herself as a financial advisor and claimed to be interested in writing a book about Shakespeare's life. She convinced him that she could help manage his newfound wealth and protect him from people who might take advantage of him. D.D. Moore gradually became more involved in Shakespeare's life, gaining his trust and taking control of his assets. Despite winning the lottery, Shakespeare faced constant appeals for money from hangers-on and strangers, including Moore. Moore became a business partner with Shakespeare and withdrew $1 million from their company's funds, which she used to buy herself a Hummer, a Chevrolet Corvette, and a truck, among other things. Moore claimed that the money was a gift from Shakespeare. At first, Shakespeare enjoyed his newfound wealth and used it to help those around him, giving away money to friends, family, and strangers who came to him with sob stories. He also invested in real estate, buying a luxurious home in a gated community, a fleet of cars, and a trucking company. Shakespeare grew increasingly frustrated with the constant demands for money and realized that many people only wanted to be around him for his wealth. He confided in friends and family that he would have been better off broke. Dee had a history of buying and selling properties, and she convinced Abraham that she could help him turn his winnings into even more money. Initially, Abraham was skeptical of Dee and her intentions. However, he eventually came to trust her and allowed her to manage his finances. Dee Dee became a frequent presence in his life, and they were often seen together at local events and in the community. Doris Donegan Dee Dee Moore was born July 25, 1972. She was married to James Moore in 1992 and has a son born in 1995. In 2001, Moore was convicted of insurance fraud and falsely reporting a crime. She served a year of probation. Moore filed for bankruptcy in 2002. However, things soon took a dark turn. Shakespeare's friends and family began to take advantage of him and his money, swindling him out of millions of dollars. Shakespeare became isolated and paranoid, leading to a downward spiral of drug and alcohol abuse. January 9, 2009. The ownership of Shakespeare's home is transferred to American Medical Professionals, Moore's company. According to Polk County records, Shakespeare's home and other properties were sold or assigned to American Medical Professionals. Of $570,000 owed to Shakespeare, more than two-thirds is owed by American Medical Professionals. February 21, 2009. Moore buys a 2008 Chevrolet Corvette for her boyfriend for $70,390.86. She pays with a cashier's check from her American Medical Professionals LLC business account. March 2, 2009. Moore buys a 2009 Hummer for about $90,000. April 2009. Shakespeare is last seen in the Lakeland area of Florida. Abraham Lee Shakespeare was reported missing by his mother, Elizabeth Walker, and Cedric Edom, Shakespeare's cousin, on November 9, 2009. Cedric Edom had not heard from him for several days and was worried about his well-being. Cedric Edom contacted the police to report her son missing, and an investigation was launched to try to locate him. Abraham's family members, including his mother Elizabeth and his siblings, were heavily involved in the search for him after his disappearance. They worked with law enforcement officials and the media to try to locate him and bring him home. As the investigation progressed, suspicions began to grow that Doris Dee Dee Moore, a woman who had been managing Abraham's finances, might be involved in his disappearance. She had been the last person to see him before he went missing, and some of Abraham's friends and family members reported that he had been unhappy with her management of his finances. December 28, 2009. Gregory Smith, one of Shakespeare's friends, is paid by Moore to make calls to Shakespeare's mother pretending to be her son. Smith is approached and interviewed by detectives and decides to start cooperating with law enforcement. January 2010. Moore contacts Gregory Smith and asks him if he knew anyone who would be willing to admit to law enforcement that they were responsible for the killing of Shakespeare. January 21, 2010. Officer Mike Smith of the Lake Wales, Florida Police Department, working undercover, is introduced to Dee Dee Moore by Gregory Smith. Moore agrees to pay Smith $50,000 if he claims responsibility for Shakespeare's death. Smith agrees, but tells Moore he needs to know where Shakespeare is buried. January 25, 2010. Dee Dee Moore shows Gregory Smith the concrete slab under which Shakespeare is buried. Moore also gives Gregory Smith the .38 Smith & Wesson revolver, which was used to kill Shakespeare Michael Ford, who had initially sued Abraham, claiming he stole his ticket, was also a friend of Dee Dee Moore and also knew Abraham Lee Shakespeare. He had helped Moore establish a company called Abraham Shakespeare LLC to manage Shakespeare's finances after he won the lottery. However, after Shakespeare disappeared, Ford became concerned and went to the police to report what he knew. January 28, 2010, Gregory Smith led the police to a property in eastern Hillsborough County, Florida. Investigators discovered Abraham's body buried under a concrete slab behind a home that Dee Dee had purchased with his money. Investigators obtained a search warrant and began digging in the area where the concrete slab was located. They used excavation equipment, shovels, and other tools to remove the concrete and carefully dig up the area beneath it. After several hours of digging, they uncovered the body of Abraham buried underneath. The body was in an advanced state of decomposition, indicating that Abraham had been dead for several weeks. An autopsy later revealed that he had been shot twice in the chest, and the death was ruled a homicide. The discovery of Abraham's body was a crucial breakthrough in the investigation into his disappearance and murder. February 2, 2010. Police take D.D. Moore into custody. Moore is charged with Abraham's murder, and in March 15, 2010. D.D. Moore pleads not guilty to murder in a Hillsborough County, Florida court. The case went to trial in March 2012. Moore told police different versions of what happened to Shakespeare. Moore, in turn, blamed drug dealers, a lawyer, and her 14-year-old son. She later said she killed Shakespeare in self-defense. Soon after the disappearance of Shakespeare, Moore, who was living in Shakespeare's house, kept using his cell phone and sending text messages to his friends and relatives, pretending she was Shakespeare. Recipients thought they did not sound like him and were suspicious because Shakespeare was illiterate. When people texted Shakespeare's phone back with questions that could not be answered by Moore, no response was given. During the same time that Moore was trying to make it appear as though Shakespeare was alive, she tried to find a person who would take the blame for Shakespeare's death for $50,000. She also offered to pay someone to dig up and move Shakespeare's body to another location. Property records show that Moore's company, American Medical Professionals, bought Shakespeare's house. Moore told investigators she paid Shakespeare $655,000 for his home and paid $185,000 for outstanding loans, which were actually worth much more, to others. However, there is no evidence showing she paid Shakespeare anything. Moore offered the mother of one of Shakespeare's two sons a $200,000 home if she would lie to detectives and tell them she had seen him recently. She also paid $5,000 to a relative of Shakespeare's to give his mother a birthday card and imply it was from him. During the trial, it was revealed that Dee was embezzling money from him and living a lavish lifestyle. She even convinced Abraham to transfer the deed to his house to her for $1. January 25, 2010. In an interview with detectives, Moore claimed the reason she did not pay Shakespeare for his house was because he had a drug problem, and the money would be used to buy drugs. Moore had befriended Shakespeare and convinced him to sign over the majority of his assets to her, including his house and his trucking company. She then murdered him in cold blood, using a .38 caliber handgun, and buried his body in her backyard. Abraham eventually realized that he was being taken advantage of and tried to cut ties with Dee. However, she was unwilling to let go of her control over his finances and became increasingly hostile toward him. This ultimately led to his tragic murder at her hands. Dee's defense team argued that she had nothing to do with Abraham's death and that he was killed by someone else. They pointed to other possible suspects, including people who had been asking Abraham for money and a man who had been seen with him before he disappeared. They also tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's evidence, arguing that there were inconsistencies in the forensic evidence and witness testimony. Michael Ford was one of the key witnesses in the investigation and trial of Doris D. Moore for the murder of Abraham Lee Shakespeare. He played a significant role in the case and provided crucial information that helped the authorities piece together the events leading up to Abraham's death. Furthermore, it was evidence during the trial that on April 2009, D. Moore called James Moore, her ex-husband, asking him, according to his later statement to police, to dig a hole in her yard. Dee claims the hole is needed to bury concrete and trash. James Moore digs a hole and is called back 2 hours later to fill the hole. James Moore, who was being paid to do other yard work by Dee, claims he filled the hole but could not see what was in it, as it was dark December 10, 2012. Dee Moore is found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
All right, tonight, the end of a story we've been covering for months. Dee Moore will spend the rest of her life in prison. Tonight, after just 3 hours of deliberation, a jury handed down their verdict. Moore is guilty of killing Abraham Shakespeare to get and keep his lottery winnings. Allison Morrow joins us now with why Abraham Shakespeare's family was so sure they would get justice. Good evening, Allison.
Good evening, Brendan. That is because they say they knew Moore was guilty all along, but the harshest words did not come from Shakespeare's family. They came from the judge.
State of Florida versus Doris Donegan Moore.
Stone-faced, unlike past tears or smiles.
The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder.
Dee Dee Moore simply shook her head no, while her victim's family nodded yes.
She had everything she wanted, and she still didn't have enough, and she took his life.
Jurors took 3 hours and 16 minutes to decide whether Moore planned to kill Abraham Shakespeare, once a lottery winner who deposited $13 million into a bank account. Witnesses say Moore stripped bare before killing him.
And this person that did this, he's going to be able to have a lifetime to think about it.
But family members saved their words for outside the courtroom. It was Judge Emmett Battles who spoke directly to Moore, a woman he scolded several times for her emotional outbursts.
Cold, calculated, cruel, they all apply. Manipulative, probably the most manipulative person that this court has seen. Abraham Shakespeare was your prey and your victim. Money was the root of the evil that you brought to Abraham.
And with that, he sentenced Moore to life in prison without parole.
During the sentencing, the judge described Dee Dee's actions as cold, calculated, and cruel, and said that she had taken advantage of a vulnerable man and exploited him to the point of no return. The case gained national attention and highlighted the dangers of sudden wealth, as well as the importance of being cautious of those who seek to exploit it. She is currently serving her sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution in Ocala, Florida. After Moore's arrest, the authorities seized many of the assets that she had acquired with Abraham's money, and some of the money was eventually returned to Abraham's family. Comment down below of your thoughts of this case. If you enjoyed learning about this case, do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing true crime cases. As always, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there.